Good day everyone, and thank you for joining us for our webinar celebrating the Day of the Seafarer. Every seafarer's journey is different, but they all face similar challenges. For 2022, the campaign is the Day of the Seafarer, Your Voyage, Then and Now. Today's discussion will focus on my panel's amazing journey into the industry. This is a relaxed chat among colleagues and friends, and we hope you enjoy. We're fortunate to have a real snapshot of our industry, from super yachts, tall ships, and the commercial shipping world. My name is Lee Clark-Forster, and I am the General Manager of Isle of Man Maritime, and it is a great honour to moderate today's conversation. It is my job to chair the discussion. However, I hope the conversation will flow as we discuss our passion, maritime. To make it all happen, I have Justin and his amazing team here at ELS, and we are recording this from the city of Douglas on the Isle of Man. Assisting me in the background to ensure we keep on time is Nathan and Leslie, and we appreciate their help, but I'm aware that they will start chucking things at me if we start going over time. So stay with us and enjoy the session. And without further ado, I will move around the room and our virtual guests, and we'll let the panel introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Dick Welsh. I'm a Director of DW Maritime Limited.
Hi, I'm Darren Webster. I'm the Manager of Marine Clean.
Hi, I'm Julie Arnold. I'm the Cadet Training Manager for Shell Ship Management.
Hi, I'm Liam Richards, and I'm a fourth engineer for Shell Ship Management.
And our virtual guests.
Hi, I'm Kate Gordon, and I'm a first
Super yachts.
Okay. Hi, I'm Kate Gordon, and I'm a purser on super yachts.
Hi, my name is Pete Roberts, and I'm a Chief Officer on super yachts. My name is Pete Roberts, and I'm a Chief Officer on super yachts.
Okay, so pick it up from wherever you want to go and then just let it flow.
So I'd like to start probably with Liam, if that's okay, and start with you. And how did you get into maritime, and how did it all start for you?
Well, basically my dad, he's a second engineer working at the Isle of Man steam packet, and he's been an engineer since he was probably the same age as me. Maybe he was qualified at 19 or 20. And he sort of introduced me to it. I wasn't so sure about it, and then one day he took me down to an engine room on one of the ships he was working on, and I was quite interested in it. So I sort of knew this is what I wanted to do, and then I didn't know how I was going to do it. I think this industry is a little bit secretive, so for anyone who's wanting to do it, it's quite hard to find a path into it. Even though we do try and advertise it and all, once you're in there, you see that, but outside of it, no one really knows what goes on. So I called up like a few cruise shipping companies and asked about a cadetship, because my dad advised me that. So, and all of them said the same thing, they don't even know what a cadet is, which was weird. And then by chance, he knew you, and at the time you were the cadet manager for V-Ships. and he just said to give Lee a message because he thinks he has something to do with it. He didn't know you were the manager at the time. And then from there it all kicked off. Like, he got me down, we had an interview, and I started my journey from there, basically.
Yeah, and what a journey you did have as well.
Yeah.
Julia, I'd like to bring you in now, and you've started probably not within the commercial, but tall ships. I mean, that is just an amazing starting point, is that right?
We go back a bit further, Lee.
Yeah.
I'm a little bit older than you, so I started my journey at sea a long time ago. I'm from a small little harbour town in Southern Ireland called Cove, County Cork. It used to be called Queenstown, and people might know it as being the last port of call for Titanic.
Oh.
And so a lot of seafarers. My grandfather was a seafarer and that, so I met somebody who was a seafarer, and I ended up going away to sea with him. So I loved it. I was just travelling, and then I went on from there. I did a lot of commercial ships, and then I did cruise ships, ferries, and yes, I did end up working on a tall ship for about 5 years. And prior to coming into the Isle of Man one night and meeting my husband, and the rest is history. So, yeah, and then now I'm now here. I am where I am now, being a seafarer, and then be able to bring it back to the table and look after cadets is a wonderful place to be in.
Yeah, absolutely. Darren, if you'd like to start from your point, where did you start?
I think my maritime career really started. I watched a movie with a gentleman called Jacques Cousteau, who was like the olden days David Attenborough of the maritime industry. I was 7 years old. It wasn't what they were doing. It was they were sitting in the mess and they were just eating some soup, and I just remember them rolling like this. They had the beanies on, and that just stuck in my mind. And I said, that's what I want to do. But I was from a city in Perth in Australia, and there was an opportunity to go to a small fishing village in Exmouth. So I just jumped on a bus. One way, I was 16 at the time. Parked outside, just banged on everyone's door until someone gave me a job. So I went out for 3 weeks for nothing. It was just that they called them tucker trips in those days, where you just went out to get food and get experience. And that was my introduction. And then from fishing, I got my first captain's ticket at 20, and I got my first boat at the same time. I stayed in the fishing industry for a couple more years, and then moved into the pearling industry and pearl diving out of Broome, and then went charter ecotourism out of Wyndham up in the Kimberley for a couple of years when it was pristine. And then I wanted to get bigger tickets, so the only way to do that was to get on bigger ships, and there was no opportunity in Australia, so I jumped on a plane, again one-way ticket to Holland, and banged on all these people's doors at this oil and gas conference, and ended up got a job out of Den Helder in Holland, and worked in the North Sea and Arctic Circle for 10 years in oil and gas, and then went back home, did that again for a few more years, and kept getting my tickets bigger. There's 5 captain's tickets in Australia, so I just kept progressing through that, and then I came ashore in like 2010 as a marine superintendent, and that was kind of the end of my maritime career, and I became shore-based as a vessel manager, and once all that finished, I came over here and jumped onto the super yacht industry, as you do, and did that for a few years, started my own business, and then got out of that a few years ago and started a small company selling a environmentally friendly product to clean up oil spills, and that's what I do today.
Fantastic, and we'll delve into that in a bit later, but Dick, where did it all start for you?
Oh, a long time ago. I'm probably the granddad here. So yeah, my father, my grandfather were engineers at sea. They'd come ashore by the time I was around. And on my father's side, there were captains, there were Mersey pilots. It was kind of preordained, I would guess. As a young lad, I grew up around boats. I grew up taking things to bits and wasn't always hugely competent in putting them back together again. But I took a cadetship with a Liverpool company, T&J Harrison's. My father's side were with another Liverpool company, Blue Star Line, and they wanted me to take a cadetship and go to London to Poplar College. And for a small lad from the Isle of Man, my dad thought this was a bit of a stretch too far, so I needed a Liverpool company and I needed to go to Liverpool. Did my cadetship with T&J's in Liverpool, and then sailed as a cadet absolutely fantastic. But in those days, of course, you're talking 44 people on board small cargo ships. You're talking 2 or 3 weeks in port, playing football against other ships, and a totally different world to the world that seafarers are doing today. And then at that time, ships and companies were changing, things were changing. I was moving from company to company. Most of my time was worldwide with Canadian Pacific, which I had a fantastic time with. But in the end, it's time to come ashore. But once you come ashore, there is another world out there. But my seafaring career, I wouldn't swap for the world. I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and what a great experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'd like to bring in my virtual guests. And if I can start with Kate. Kate, where did you start getting into the super yacht sector? That is such an amazing journey and sometimes the most glamorous side of our industry. Would you just like to get into that?
Thank you, Lee. Yes, I started my journey about 15 years ago, and I was sitting in Fort Anne in a ship management company there. And I just joined the yachting department that had opened up. And I remember seeing, I think it was Amevi at the time, came into port to get registered. And I was sat at my desk and I was like, I want to go and work on one of those big shiny boats. So that's the path that I took. I spoke to my boss at the time and, I said that this is what I want to do. And he fully backed me. And then I took myself off to the south of France, into Antibes, and I did the necessary courses, completed that, updated my CV, and I sent my CV to various recruitment agencies, and I got a lucky break on a new build in Holland. And yeah, so that's where I started. That was 15 years ago as junior stewardess. So I started right at the bottom and worked my way up to purser. And yeah, I've just recently gone shore based now because I've started a family. And yeah, I just absolutely love the industry. It's something that I would recommend to anybody.
That's great. And Peter, if I can bring you in now, Chief Officer of a super yacht, but where did it all start for you?
Yeah, my family actually have kind of all sailed at sea. My father was a master mariner, my mum was a nurse at sea, and my sister was, like Kate, was a purser. So it kind of seemed I was destined to go to sea at some point. But I used to race sailboat, and I used to teach sailing and went down that route. And I was fairly adamant that I was going to carry on sailboats, and I thought that was real sailing. And then somebody offered me a job as a deckhand on a motor yacht and told me it was going to the Maldives, and I threw all my morals out the window and decided that seemed a lot better idea than sailing around. So that was also about 16, 17 years ago now. But yeah, and started off as a deckhand. And yeah, I loved it. I mean, it's taken me to places I could have, only dreamt of going to, really. And it's given both me and Kate a great life, really.
No, absolutely. I suppose that leads nicely into my next question in terms of we've all had fantastic careers in maritime, and I suppose this is going to be a difficult question to really pinpoint one. But Liam, you're quite young into the sector, but what's been your most memorable moment so far?
I'd say there's two, if I can be greedy.
Yeah.
It was sort of the start of my career and also the end of my cadetship. So the start was joining my first ship. It was the ACL Atlantic Sea, which is a 300-metre container ro-ro, and it's a massive thing. And just walking up to that ship and seeing it in person, like, you don't really get a feel for it when you see them in the water or on TV or anything like that. And when you see it in person, it's just it's quite breathtaking, really. So that, just seeing that in person and actually going into the engine room, seeing how big everything is, and it's just mad. And then the next one was actually passing my orals. So I done my oral exam on my birthday. So it was like sort of double pressure.
Yeah.
And like the feeling you get when they say, you know, you've passed and all, it's just the biggest weight off your shoulders.
Yeah.
You know, you've got 4 years on that moment,
Yeah.
and that you've been preparing for. So yeah, it was a good birthday.
Yeah.
And I was really happy about that.
Yeah.
So.
And Julie, have you got any fond memories?
Yeah, I've lots. I mean, we need loads of time to talk about the wonderful experiences I've gone through. But like Liam, I remember I joined the QE2 in Tokyo, and I remember coming off the crew bus and looking up, and just this black wall. It was just so high. I was thinking, wow, this is amazing. And you know, it was the old QE2, so you know, she was small in comparison to what's out there today. But that'll always stick in my memory. But one of the most favourite memories I have is we were sailing out of Newcastle on the tall ship during a tall ships race, and of course on a race, no engines. And I remember, you know, we were only a small ship, like 170 metres or something, and we were sailing away full sail. And you're looking behind. I was sitting on the aft deck and looking behind and seeing the Dharma Jersey, the Polish ship, and the Sedov, the Russian ship. These are 3-masted barks, massive ships coming down, and it was like, all I needed to hear was the Oneiden line music in my ears. And it was just, you could have been at any era in time, because these ships were just so majestic, and it'll always stick in my memory.
And Darren, have you got some? I mean, you've had an amazing career. I suppose it would be hard to pick one.
A most memorable moment. Well, yeah, would be plenty. It's a great opportunity for a career. I think one thing that probably sticks in my mind would be probably shore-based, coming ashore, and I was fortunate to be given a cadetship program, so I could bring the cadets online, and it was also an Indigenous program as well for the Indigenous Australians, and I worked on that really hard, and we got a lot of support. But seeing the joy of these young guys and girls coming in, I went all around Australia to choose these people, and they were so thankful, and they still keep in touch today. This is years later, but their careers have blossomed, and that's really rewarding for me. Out of everything that I've done, to see other people come into this industry and make a go of it, and really enjoyed it. It's changed their lives as it did mine. So that would probably be.
Absolutely. And Julie as well. We can resonate with that. We've been cadet managers for a number of years, and seeing, like Liam said, that moment of getting that ticket. Even for us, every time we saw the messages coming in that the cadets had passed, we know the hardships and the struggles that they went through to get that is truly amazing. Dick, where do you start, really?
I've had a lot of great moments. But I think, I was thinking about this, the thing that always sticks with you, I think, is your first trip. And a young lad from the Isle of Man, I'd never had a passport, I'd never been abroad. I didn't even travel on a passport to my first ship. You joined a ship in Liverpool on your discharge book, and we set off, and I was on a small general cargo tween-decker, and arriving in my first port was Port Sudan. So we'd gone through the Suez Canal, we'd gone through the Mediterranean, through the Suez Canal, and you get ashore in Port Sudan, and the smells, the sights, the sounds of just being somewhere completely bizarre to the world I'd grown up in. And that really started it for me. And I can think back to that port and the times we had, but I don't think that ever leaves you. And all of a sudden, you're part of a global industry, and then joining ships in foreign ports, leaving ships in foreign ports, spending all that time visiting the ports around the world. Absolutely fantastic. And that's what sticks with me.
No, that's
It's a great
great.
opportunity.
I'd like to come to our virtual guests, and Kate, I'm sure you've seen some amazing places and done so many things, but what was the memory that stuck out for you?
Gosh, there are so many highlights, but I'd like to totally agree with what Dick's just said there is, just going to that first port of call. For me, that was Antigua, and I remember we sailed into Antigua, and I just remember the sunshine and the blue sky, and there was these white butterflies just flying all around us as we came into port, and that memory just sticks into my head. And yeah, that's one of the highlights. Another one is being able to go to the Galapagos Islands and traveling around there and seeing all the the animals and the wildlife. It was just amazing. And also charters and meeting these high profile guests that, you know, it's just beyond your wildest dreams to meet Beyonce, you know, and I've done it and it's been fantastic.
No,
That's just a
absolutely.
few.
I suppose one of the most amazing things about our careers is that we've all traveled the world and we've seen things. And I never actually ever thought that I would go to the island of St. Helena and Tristan da Cunha and all these amazing places. It really is such a big part of the maritime sector. And Pete, bringing you in now, I mean, what stood up for you?
It's actually funny you should mention St. Helena, Tristan da Cunha and Ascension. We did that run down through those islands, and unbelievable. It was otherworldly. I think certainly St. Helena is probably one of the most fascinating places I've ever been to. Just the history there, and the island itself, so remote, but yeah, an amazing place. Certainly that area, destination-wise, would be the winner for me. But on a personal level, I think me manoeuvring the vessel and you know, taking it into port in some relatively tight spots, those are the things you kind of train for, and you always really want to do. And I think the first time I ever did it, I'll never forget. Just nervous energy, but it was yeah, it was what you train to do, and yeah, I'll never forget it.
No, absolutely. So, you know, it is all about that journey, isn't it? And moving on from that, you know, Liam, where are you now? What are you doing?
So I'm currently a fourth engineer for Shell, and I've just finished my first contract with them, and I'm quite cemented as a fourth engineer now. So it was supposed to be a 4-month contract, but I ended up doing 8 because of all these regulations and whatnot around Asia.
Yeah.
But looking at a positive from it, I got the experience in there, and now I've got a nice chunk of time off back home that I can enjoy, and you know, I'm back for TT, so I'm happy about that.
I suppose that's a real big positive of our industry is sometimes, you know, when I was at sea, I only really worked half a year, you know, because you've got such great leave period. And even at that point, you made memories because you were able to go on holiday, longer holidays than just a couple of weeks. So that's great. And Julie, where are you now?
Well, I'm cadet training manager for Shell, Lee, and a success story is like we offer sea time berths to other cadets, not just Shell sponsored, and Liam is a success story of that. You know, I worked with you and we offered Liam some sea time, and then now here he is. He's one of our fourth engineers, you know, and it's great. And it's good to hear that you've cemented your career, because that's a really success story for me as a manager, because it's nice to be able to take these young kids on the journey. So I'm working 6 years now with Shell, but previous to that I had 10 years with Bibbies and BP. So about, you know, a long time working with cadets. So yeah, and I'm loving it. But the nicest thing about it is like Liam has just said, you know, passing his orals, informing us, the excitement. I get just as excited as the kids do, and I love to see them on their journey, and to be a part of it is, for me, it's a very rewarding career.
And certainly what we're doing on the Isle of Man with Isle of Man Maritime and trying to encourage youngsters into maritime. It's over the last, since I've been in post for 12 months now, it's been great to see and get out there. And I think, Liam, you mentioned earlier on, it's so, we are a hidden industry, and how we really get out there, and with us going into schools now and getting those cadets and ratings, and also people ashore. One of the things that we're really keen on doing is that journey from sea to shore, because I remember when I was at sea, I didn't know about coming ashore and that prospect of that leap. And it's great that we're actually telling that story now, that your career doesn't end just when you're on board. You can come ashore, and there, on the Isle of Man, there's a wealth of that. And Darren, you know, you're now an innovative company with your products and stuff like that. I mean, how did you get into that from a superintendent to having your own business?
I think it was just a general transition, really. I came ashore in Australia for various reasons. You know, I had a family, and when I moved from there, came over here to start yachting. It was quite an intense job doing yacht management, and there was a lot of demands, as well as the crew was everyone around it. And I kind of felt like I'd been doing all these industries, which is, you know, fishing and oil and gas, and then, you know, looking after wealthy people. And I kind of just felt like I wanted to contribute something back towards the tail end of my career to the world, you know, to the environment, basically. You're seeing all these things going on, and a colleague of mine in Australia, you know, helped us out with this product, and I thought, this is what I want to do. You know, you want to go to sleep at night and think I'm actually doing something, instead of just like, not taking, but I mean, my maritime career was awesome, and I'd never change it for the world. But having something like this, in being involved in it, it's basically just a product that helps the environment, and it attracts a lot more different industries. You know, that's the future now, and everyone's sort of involved in it, and I think it makes it aware. And then because you're involved in it on a small scale, you see the huge impact and what we really need to do with the planet and with each other, and everyone seems to be on board with it, whereas 20 years ago that wasn't the case. And, you know, go back 40 years ago and you used to see what we did with the environment was horrifying compared to today. And, you know, the youth today are a lot more aware of it, and they're embracing it, and I think they're standing up to some of these bigger corporations who, you know, it's profit line as opposed to longevity and sustainability, and you know, that's quite rewarding to do that, you know.
And that is generating within the maritime sector a whole new, in terms of renewables and everything like that, and certainly
it's encouraged.
Yeah,
you know, people
absolutely.
are actually saying this is what we want, and you know, 5-10 years ago, you're kind of fighting this. It's like, the environment. It's like safety management systems when they first come out. Everyone was against it. It was like, it's more. But when they start realising the benefits of it, and now with the environmental side of it, everyone is on board, and it's really encouraging, and you know, it's quite a positive thing. And it opens so many more opportunities for, you know, young mariners coming through, like I say, coming ashore. You know, you do this great maritime career, you get all these tickets and qualifications, but that leaves you in such good stead. When you do want to have a family, or you do want to settle down, you can still go to sea, you can still keep your tickets going, but you know, you can still diversify and do a lot more things with it, and you know, there's great opportunities. Absolutely,
and that was my fear coming ashore. And I actually remember speaking to you, Julie, before I made that leap off the St Helena, and I originally thought that my career was over, but this whole new world just opened up, and so many different avenues, and there are so many different ways into maritime, and that's what's really encouraging. And Dick, you're now owner of your own consultancy firm, but your journey is so much more than that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, there is a world when you leave the sea, as you mentioned. It's quite a big step, but it's really important to get the time at sea, to enjoy your time at sea, but to learn the industry as well when you're at sea. And there is a whole umbrella organisation that makes seafaring happen, that makes shipping happen, and that can be. So my route was, once I left the sea, to go into surveying. So I worked for 2 class of societies. I worked for Detnorsky Veritas, I worked for Lloyd's Register. I was involved in shipbuilding in Denmark, and then in China in the early days of Chinese shipbuilding. And then I came back to the Isle of Man. There was an opportunity that the Isle of Man was running its own flag state here, Maritime Administration. Joined that, and then for 25 years was really about putting that on the map. We had surveyors working for us, we had people, legal teams working for us, we had people promoting the industry, and it was just a fantastic journey. But getting involved in all different aspects of the industry. So my advice is just get out there, learn what you can, and don't be blinkered about this industry. It's great to be at sea, but it's not just an engine room, and it's not just a wheelhouse. There's so much more out there. And while you're on board, learn as much as you can about that. And then there's other industries like the yachting industry, offshore industry, fishing industries. Everybody's involved in it. And then there's the umbrella organisations, the insurers, etc. above that. So yeah, I've had a fantastic time. But I then retired from this government post running the flag administration. I now set up my own consultancy, so DW Maritime. And I've just hot off the press taken on the Isle of Man Commissioner for the Northern Lighthouse Board. So ships are so last year now, I'm into lighthouses now. So yeah, there's all sorts of things that you can get involved with. And again, it's a maritime industry. We have our own ships, we maintain our own lighthouses. So yeah, that's been my journey.
And what's amazing is that even on the Isle of Man, we've all been connected through, we've all interlinked, and we all know each other, and certainly, but one of the things that I actually highlight of my year last year was Yacht A coming in, and how that really opened up the island, the posts around it, and this is where I'm excited to really know more, Kate and Pete, about how youngsters can get into super yachts, but also, I mean, yourself, Kate, as a purser, let's have a conversation. What does that entail, and where are you now, and what you're doing?
Okay, so Pete and I were very lucky to work on a fantastic boat together, and we met, and we've recently started a family. So I've got a little just over 1-year-old boy, so I'm at home looking after him at the moment. So I'm not actually on a yacht, but it's been wonderful. And yeah, heading into the industry, all I can say is just, if you're considering it, just, take that leap and go for it, and just go with a positive outlook. And it's going to be really hard work to start with, all the way along actually, but yeah, just enjoy it and take what you can from the industry, and yeah, go out there and do it.
No, absolutely, and we actually use your video, Kate, in schools, and it's amazing how the kids within the island schools really resonate, and they were so excited to hear you talk about the super yacht industry, because again, Yacht A really did highlight this massive big super yacht in the bay, and we've got super yachts coming into Douglas quite regularly now. So your piece was really a success, and the kids are really excited. And Pete, I presume that are you still going to sea and doing that?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I'm still a chief officer on board, and yeah, that's where kind of me and Kate met, and we started our family. But yeah, I'm still away. It's a rotational position, so I kind of work about 6 weeks away, and then obviously 6 weeks on leave. But it's echoing really what Kate was saying. I think yachting as a sector sometimes gets the reputation, as I know that's how you introduced it, the slightly more glamorous side of the maritime industry. I wouldn't go into it thinking it's the glamorous side. It's glamorous if you're a guest on the yacht. It's not maybe so glamorous if you're starting out as a deckhand. Yeah, you might go to nice places, you'll be working in the sunshine, but cleaning out garbage fridges and bilges, I perhaps wouldn't describe it as glamorous, but it's hard graft, like any part of the industry, and I definitely would recommend it to anybody. I don't regret my decision going into the industry at all, and it's taken us around the world, and yeah, just it's a great industry, and yeah, to get into it initially, yachting is slightly different. You go through perhaps slightly different channels in the fact that you kind of get your qualifications with no, you're not necessarily going into a job. You get your qualifications, and the way that Kate did it, I was slightly luckier. Kate went out to south of France, and you're pretty much knocking on people's doors asking for a chance to get on there and work for them, and them to give you a trial, and you get your work through that way. And like Liam was saying earlier, it is difficult. It's a bit of a hidden industry. People don't. It isn't really common knowledge that how the process of going through and getting onto a yacht. So yeah, I think we could probably do more there to encourage people into that sector, definitely.
No, that's absolutely, and that leads us really nicely into our sort of next question is, Liam, we've got a lot of young seafarers coming through now, and we're promoting the Isle of Man sector and the Isle of Man Cadet program and rating. What advice would you give our young mariners that want to come into the system and become where we are now?
I'd say go for it, really, if you're humming and hawing about it. give it a try, because what you do with your cadetship is you'll spend a bit of time at college anyway to begin with, and then you'll do one trip at sea. And I think that's where most people make their mind up, whether they like it or not. And it's, you know, not even a year in and you're at sea, normally sort of 6 months and you'll join your first ship. And if you don't like it, that's fair enough. But I'd say 95% of people after that first ship love it, and they go through the whole cadetship, and like most of the people are successful. Yeah. So it's not, even though we're saying it's hard work and that, it's not as intimidating as you might think it is. It's something that you should go for, especially if you're interested.
Absolutely. And Julie, yourself?
Yeah, the maritime career, I always say, is about 10 years behind, you know, jobs ashore and things like that. But the opportunities that the maritime career can give is just, you know, it's endless really, you know, and from starting your cadetship to doing something like Dick is doing now is amazing. You know, you get kids deciding to do this and thinking about it when they're about 16, GCSE, start of A-levels and things. And you know, the colleges seem to push people towards universities, but I say, why not maritime? Because it's the university of life really, it's life experiences. And it is great if they, you know, think seriously about what you want to do though, because it's you know, it's a journey, and it can take you, you know, 5 years to 10 years to get to the top of your game. It's tax-free, you know, it's great for mum and dad, you know what I mean? Bank of mum and dad is fantastic. It is, it's just trying to get it out there, as Liam said and Pete said as well, is raising that profile of maritime. Yeah. And thankfully we are able to do that here on the Isle of Man now. But I say, yeah, I mean, the kids that I've been part of their journey are working their way up now to higher ranks, and that is fantastic for them as well. And it's great, it's just a wonderful opportunity. And there's so much out there.
No, absolutely. And like you said, it's trying to raise that profile. And one of the things that was really amazing for us is last year, Isle of Man Maritime ran a tall ship initiative. And we had 5 young police cadets go on board. And I just remember they didn't know what to expect. They were excited, but you know, we do have one of them potentially going to Fleetwood next year to become a deck cadet. But it all started with that initial and that initial interest. And believe it or not, that was the one police cadet that she rang her mom, and I think on the second day, because it was very rough and she just wanted to come off. But by the end of the week, all of them had just blossomed, and one of them won Trainee of the Year. And where his focus was very much police, all of a sudden questions around joining the maritime, sort of like the Thames Police and the River Police, and those questions got generated, and they came off so excited. And you know, and we're doing it again this year, and we're running a competition currently, and I'm really excited to see how we can take that further, because you know, like Liam said, you may not have had that opportunity, so your college and Sea Time was your first taste of it all, where, you know, running these initiatives I think is so important, because the youth get to know, you know, they're cooking, they're cleaning, they're up the rig, you know, they're late hours. I mean, I got sent a picture of them, and all 4 of them were on the table sort of fast asleep, you know, they couldn't even finish their meal. But the excitement behind it, didn't put them off. They wanted to get on deck. So for us, that was so rewarding, and we're so lucky that we're doing it again this year. Darren, what advice do you have for our youngsters?
Well, I agree with Liam. Just go for it. If you're interested in the maritime sector, there's so many opportunities. If you're not sure where to go, because I think that is kind of what you were explaining before, the pathway cannot be that clear. There's a lot of people you can contact. I mean, even yourself, you know, contact Isle of Man Maritime or any sort of body to point you in the right direction. You know, should I just be a deckhand first and then progress that way, or should I go into a cadetship? Do I want to be an engineer? Do I want to be a cook? You know, there's so many different ways you could do it, but who do you talk to? I think that's but be patient as well. You know, you're not going to get to the top straight away, and a lot of times you don't want to. You want to have this experience, so when you finally do, if you're, you know, an engineer, you want to be a chief engineer, you want to have all that background knowledge, so when you've got younger crew underneath you can relate to them. Same with being a captain, and same, you know, with being a purser or all these positions of authority. You need to have that understanding of what that experience. Otherwise, how can you relate? it's, you know, it's to be patient, but enjoy it as well. It's an adventure. You're going to see that a lot of places. It's going to open a lot of doors. If you get bored with one industry, which I have over the years, I've done this, and okay, I want to do something else, just personality-wise. There's so many doors to open, and once you get your tickets and qualifications, and I encourage everyone to get as much as they can. So when you do go into these positions, you say, well, I have done this and I have done that, and you're not just keeping the bare minimum to get a job. I think one of the big tickets that I ever got was a DPO ticket, dynamic positioning, and jumping on these huge ships, 11 stories, and no steering wheel. And you're like, how does this work? But it's all computerised, and it was so advanced, and especially for the youth of today who are all, you know, computer-based. I mean, these big ships are, you know, you're doing 10-centimetre moves, and it's, you know, 11 stories, 300 people on board, and you're thinking how this technology works. Whereas when we grew up, it was totally different. It was hardcore, and
but even not that far along. I mean, I was on the St. Helena, and we got Ectus for this the first time.
Yeah.
And the captain, the chief engineer, pretty much thought it was, you know, they would not go anywhere near it. Yeah. But the younger officers we quickly just went, right, this is what you do. So technology is something that is driving through. And I was watching a program again, you know, being a seafarer is so dynamic nowadays, and different ways where you can actually be a seafarer driving a ship from an office in London and the ship's in the South China Sea. And yes, you know, it's a different skill set now also, but we're not going to lose our traditional seafarers. They are the backbone of industry, they're the backbone of distribution, and that's what's really important. And again, ships are they're just amazing. Yesterday I was in Liverpool and I saw the Celebrity Edge for the first time. And that is just an amazing vessel. It has a restaurant that comes up and down on the side of it. You know, so everything's moving hopefully in the right direction, but we still need our seafarer skill set. Do you think that's right, Dick?
Absolutely, yeah. You still need to know what to do when equipment fails, and equipment does fail. But to get that grounding, one of my pieces of advice would be, and I said it earlier, don't limit yourself to your environs of the engine room. I love the engine room. I love being in charge of that plant. And I love knowing that I know everything about that plant and what to do. But I probably wish I'd spent a little bit more time asking questions of everybody else on board and not being just solely focused on machinery. Because my later career was a surveyor, and I'm now looking at cargo tanks, and I'm now looking at navigation equipment and safety equipment and lifeboats and davits. And I had to ask and glean the information from the people that are on board, the chief mates and the pursers and the cooks and whatever else you're dealing with. You've got to ask them, and they love to tell you about what they know. So my recommendation would be, yes, find a seagoing career, because it's a fantastic thing to get into, but also it's a proper career. Liam will take step after step after step, and he'll be a marketable person with fantastic transferable skills. But ask those questions while you're at sea, and broaden your horizons about the ship that you're on, and the environment you're on, the ports, everything about what you're doing. Just find out a little bit more.
You're absolutely right, and one of the benefits to our industry is that there's always a next step, there's always another ticket, there's always another qualification that you can go for. So, you know, I think our area is that once you're in the industry, then the pathways come clear, but we're not so very good at discussing that. And do you want to add something to that in terms of the skills?
Well, I was just saying, you know, we always talk about it in our career events, Dick, you know, over the years here on the island, 90% of the world's goods are still transported by sea. You know, so it's always going to be an industry that's going to have to be filled. You know, so the opportunities are just getting better and better all the time. And yes, ask questions. And, you know, I rely heavily on our cadets to be the social hub now, because sometimes ships can get so busy and get bogged down with technology that you lose that whole ethos of being, you know, natural and being, you know, comfortable in your environment. But the cadets, thankfully, I think now are creating that lovely atmosphere. Like we're on tankers, okay? So, but there's the swimming pool, and the swimming pool was never filled up to recently. And the cadets, first ones on board, great pool parties, bit of fun, do you know what I mean? And just create, because it's not all about work, it's about having that, raising that profile of enjoying themselves, you know, and then ask questions, you know, constantly, because kids are very inquisitive. So they keep asking questions, keep looking for the next challenge, you know what I mean, and to work your way up, and then seeing what's there beyond it. That to me is great, you know, because the opportunities are there now, which is fantastic.
And that's it, and taking that further, you know, looking at how we can explore things differently on the Isle of Man, and taking our cadetship and rating, and we've having very good conversation within the fishing industry. You know, we had a young female fisherman won Fisherman of the Year on the Isle of Man, and that's another sector that, you know, the progression is so amazing. Kate, can I bring you in now, and what's your sort of advice in terms of for our younger seafarers?
Thanks, Lee. Yes, I mean, I grew up in Ramsey. I'm just, you know, a normal girl from Ramsey, and if I can do it, anyone can do it, really. It's yeah, and just like getting into the industry, and getting your first job, and yeah, you it is very important to, you know, start at the lower ranks and work. You've got so many opportunities when you are on the yacht to move up. Different jobs open up, whether it's in interior or deck, or you want to cross over between the two. It's all, you know, it's all available to you. You can do it. So yeah, it's just give it a go. And I went into it, I said 6 months and I'll be back, and it was 15 years later. So yeah.
And just going back to what you said earlier on, Dick, you know, one of my era, we did have that deck engine, that divide, but speaking to the cadets of today, and certainly that's broken down now, isn't it? Because it needed to be, because they're more communicating with each other now, aren't they? And certainly when it comes with the ETO officer, they're so much more embedded and more dynamic now. Liam, would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. As an engineer, though, they do rely on you when an ETO is not there. And I feel like there should be more ETOs in the industry.
Yes.
For sure. If you're thinking about being an electrician shoreside, maybe think about a career at sea. My friend, he's just qualified as an electrician, and after speaking to him about what I do, he's now considering it.
Brilliant.
So that might be something that he does in the future.
And Isle of Man Maritime can certainly facilitate that with Julian and our other companies as well. Pete, coming to you now, what's your advice?
I think, if you've got, even if you maybe go on the steam packet, you're interested in it, you like the feeling of being at sea. You know, funnily enough, I travelled on boat. I think you served on, Lee, when I was a little boy. I travelled on the St. Helena. My father was captain, and that gave me my love for being at sea. And I was, you know, inquisitive about all elements of it, whether it was the engine room, whether it was the bridge. And if you are interested in any element of being at sea, pursue it. It's a great industry, and you know, like you guys were saying, ETOs will only become a much bigger part of the industry as technology advances. But there's something for everybody, and it's, you know, no matter what department you're in, it's that whole kind of family. Certainly in the yachts, you know, without going too big, you kind of have that family vibe. So you break down the barriers of those departments a bit. And I like, or I always advise people to be, you know, curious about all departments. You know, if you're a chief mate who doesn't know anything about your engines, you're going to struggle making that move up to captains. You've got to know your vessel.
Yeah, and that's so important, isn't it, for today, and how we move that forward is. And seafarers we're so resilient and so dynamic, and how there's other skills, not just what we learn in terms of our departments and what we got on our piece of paper. There is so much more that we learn, and certainly I think seeing cadets board the vessel, I think Julie will agree with me, when they first go on board to actually when they come, you know, when they're qualified, it's an amazing journey, isn't it?
It's the 2 steps, isn't it? We
Yeah,
call it. The
yeah.
first step, getting your cadetship, and then the next big step is getting your seniors ticket. They're the 2 greatest steps in a cadet's and officer's life cycle, really. You know, but yeah, there is. It's just exciting, isn't it?
And
It
you
really
mentioned
is.
about the mother that came to you and said, look, I gave you my boy. And
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah, I was working with cadets from Warsash, and I was invited to talk on at one of the graduations. Nerve-wracking a little bit, but one of my lines, and the parent came to me afterwards, what I said, that a mother came to me once and said, I gave you my boy, you gave me back a man, and I want to thank you for that, for the bottom of my heart. And that's resonated with me as a cadet manager, you know, because that's your job, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and it just kind of just boxes it in nicely into a nice little capture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the elements we haven't touched on here as well is the multicultural element
Yes.
of seafaring.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
diversity and everything.
Diversity, everything about it,
Yeah.
the people you meet, the people you work with, and the way you interact, it makes you a much different person than if I'd sat in Port Erin or Castletown in the Isle of Man and taken a job here and spent my life here. It truly is global, and the friends that I have around the world from this industry and the way that we all interact, and of course now because you can talk, you know, on Zoom or whatever it is around the world, it is a phenomenal thing to shrink that world the way that this industry does and the way we all get on. And there are different cultural elements, but you've got to learn how each other thinks and how each other works. Fantastic
It is.
skill to have, and a fantastic way it changes you, I think.
Absolutely. We are one of the biggest industries, but it's amazing the connections that's made. And, you know, the St. Helena seems to follow me around everywhere. It really does, because, you know, I started off at the steam packet. I was a young customer service assistant pouring coffee. A chief officer said, this is where I'm from, and I was persuaded to go to sea. A couple of years later, that very same chief officer came on board the St. Helena, and she was from St. Helena. Yeah. And Belinda Bennett's now is an amazing ambassador for the island, but also for the career. She's the first St. Helenian to become a captain, a female captain for a big cruise company. But again, all those connections are there, and the people, it's the seafarers, it's the people that really make our industry, isn't it? And I think that's where, if anyone doesn't have anything else to say, we'll end the webinar. I would like to thank our virtual guests. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today, and also to my panelists. Thank you very much. So just a thank you for joining us today as we explored the amazing maritime sector and really celebrated seafarers. This webinar will be available on Isle of Man social media, and from all of us here in the studio and our virtual guests, I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thanks, Lee.
Thanks.